Whether you're an agent or a seller, everyone wants to feel like they're not leaving money on the table. In this video, we're talking all about how to accomplish exactly that. If you have specific questions about our pricing strategies, message me on Insta or send me an email. My info is in the description below. Everybody wants to sell their property for the most a buyer's willing to pay in the shortest period of time possible. And of course, every buyer wants to pay the lowest amount possible. What sellers often forget is when they first list their property for sale, most of the activity that they get on that property is going to be in that first surge of activity that when it first hits the market. And based on what the average days on market are, if it doesn't sell during that period of time, it could potentially be time to revisit the price, or you could also run the risk of missing the boat and losing that market activity or timing in the market if it's a seasonal timing, and or of course your property could then become stale and or stigmatized when people start asking the question, what's wrong with the property? Now let's talk a little bit more on how we go about having the conversations to make sure that the seller feels confident that they are being realistic and in the market but still not leaving money on the table. Yes, we all know that some sellers become emotionally attached to the property. We find that very common here in Saskatchewan when it comes to farmland and farm properties. But what I always say is the higher the motivation, the lower the price, and sometimes the lower the motivation, the higher the price. So again, when you talk to a farmer who's not ready to sell, or any home seller for that matter, yeah, everything is for sale at a crazy, ridiculous high price. But I've also had conversations with sellers who are very, very, very motivated. When I present what's possible on price, they say that's too high because I need to sell and I need to sell quickly. So I'd rather have a quick sell and potential interested parties that puts us in control of other terms when it comes to selling my property. Understanding the market is super important because some misconceptions sellers sometimes have is that it comes down to me selling at whatever price I decide. And what I say to them is, you don't choose the price, I don't choose the price. The market essentially determines the price, and I'm just here as a messenger of what's happening in the market. It will sell at the end of the day for the most a buyer is willing to pay. And it's my job as an experienced agent to help identify who the highest bidder might be and who the ideal buyer is for this particular style of product. And if we understand what's happening in the market, we might have more control as a seller if there is limited inventory. But the reverse is also true if there is a substantial amount of inventory. So understanding the current market is essential. Yes, you need to be able to look at what's happening in the market today as far as recent comparables, but you also need to know what's happening in the market today as far as what types of activities do you see as an active agent taking place right now that are not available when you look at the stat sheet or when you look at recent comparable sales on paper. So if you go one step further when you're doing your market evaluation and you have 3 close comparables and you phone both the buyer's agent and the seller's agent on all 3 of those properties to dig for a little bit more information, you will have a lot more tools and information in your arsenal when you do your market evaluation or pricing conversation. And if you want to take it one step further for any active comparable listings, go out and look at those listings in person so that you can then say to the seller when you're having the conversation, I've actually been in this property and this property is substantially better than yours, and here are the specific reasons why, which you might not be able to tell just by looking at this listing on paper. And of course, the reverse could also be true. I've looked at this listing and your property is substantially nicer, and I know you can't see it by looking on paper, but I have good news for you. If you feel that you've priced your property competitively and it's been on the market for a longer period of time than what is now considered the average days on market, as an agent, it's a really great idea to do another market evaluation considering it's been on the market for, as an example, 45 days. Let's review this so that now you're not asking for a price adjustment. All you're doing is educating to your seller an update on what's happening in the market today so that they can accurately reflect on that and make a decision based on on facts. If you're having a difficult time finding accurate comparables for this particular listing, it's a great idea to look at market segments or to look at the overall market in order to determine what is the average days on market for this particular type and style of product. For example, if you were to isolate the east side of town between 400 and 500,000 for a property that is built in 2000 or newer with a double attached garage, here's what we've seen for active on the market today right now, and here's how many units have sold since you've listed yours for sale. Now keep in mind as well, if the average days on market generally speaking is 45 days, but if we were to isolate the segment where this property currently stands and there hasn't been any sales in that price bracket, then we can then communicate accurately to the seller, yes, the average days on market for the market is, same as what we've been for sale now, but there hasn't been anything else like yours that is sold either, and there's a number of other listings for sale. However, that could also be a reflection of A, there aren't that many buyers in the market for this type of product, or B, the buyers are responding as a reflection of the fact that they feel that the product that's listed for sale right now is not within the means of the market in terms of them feeling incentivized enough to pull the trigger and make a decision based on what's for sale now. So if we are to make an adjustment before anybody else, we could get picked as the one of several units for sale. However, keep in mind too that it could simply just be market timing. It could be seasonal market timing. And we also don't want to create a price war from a handful of properties that are currently accurately listed for sale right now that could simply shake loose if we give it just a little bit more time. I just wanted to phone you right now to give you an update as to what's happening, and here's what I currently see. It's important to set proper expectations with the seller because the biggest complaint that sellers have is that an agent put up a sign in a lockbox and they never heard from them again. I'll explain a little bit later in the video why exactly that happens. But sellers will often say, I want to list high in order to leave room for negotiations. And the best response I know for that is, I understand that you want to list high to leave room for negotiations, but have you considered the problem that that creates for you? Well, I'd rather be able to put you in a position where if we price it closer to what you want, we might be able to get an offer or even more than one offer. And worst case scenario, if you don't like the offer, you can always say no. But really at the end of the day, wouldn't that be better than not getting any offers at all? And if we price it at what you're talking about, there's nothing currently on the market right now that suggests or reflects that it's possible for us to do that and still gain any activity. And so at the end of the day, isn't that what you really want? At the end of the day, wouldn't you rather be in a position of control? You can always say no, but it's better to have an offer than to not have an offer. No matter what the sellers say, never ever make them wrong. Always solidify and confirm and reaffirm what it is that they say. If you look at the neighborhood right now for where the property is currently listed for sale or about to be listed for sale, you could say something like, hey, there's currently a 4-month supply of properties on the market in this neighborhood, being that there's 20 for sale right now, and there's been approximately 4 or 5 per month that have sold over the last several months. And so as you can see here, if you want to get picked and you want to be in Calgary within the next 2 months, as you'd mentioned, we've got to at least be top 5 in order to get picked in the next 30 to 60 days. And keep in mind too, the market is always changing, and this is based on no new homes coming onto the market. There's a 4-month supply, but there's always new properties coming on the market as well. And then you turn it back on them. So based on what I've just presented, what price do you feel that we should use in order to create value in the eyes of the buyer and get somebody to decide to buy your property versus the competition? And just keep digging down that conversation. You might say, or they might say, what do you think, Chris? And you say, well, I have a gut figure in mind, a gut feel and a figure in mind, but I'd first like to hear what your perspective is, and then I'll respond with how possible that might be and what we might do, what we might need to do in order to get to that price, which leads into my next point. You can also present and justify what the sellers are requesting on price, what they might need to be able to offer in order to achieve that. Now, you might run into one of two things. Here are a list of upgrades that you would need to be able to offer if you wanted to justify that price. Or if you were to continue down that conversation and say, if you were to charge that price, you would then be competing with double attached garage style homes. And considering your home has a detached garage, you would then be outpaced in the market by far, considering what you can then afford at those price brackets, at those price points. So the ceiling price for a particular type and style of home is one factor. There's only so much that you can charge for a 1,000 square foot bungalow built in 1950s in XYZ neighborhood. But at the same time, there's price points or price brackets where if we charge $350 or more, we're all of a sudden then competing with new types and style of property. As an example, you're looking at townhouses up to $350, but then $350 to $400, you're starting to look at entry level single family homes. So we don't want to go head to head with something that substantially has more value on paper than what we currently do in the market. Ultimately, too, you have to come back to and revisit the seller's motivation. What happens, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, if it doesn't sell? What other alternatives do you have from selling? Could you rent it out? What are the implications behind that? Could you sell it to a family member or rent it to a family member? What are the implications of that? Based on what the goals are for what you said you wanted to do, what other options do you have? And what happens if it doesn't sell by XYZ date? And you can provide additional solutions for that. And when you do that, it removes the outcome from the situation and it allows you to be in a position of genuine, authentic advice without having a commission check attached to that. And when they see you in that position and you say, hey, look it, I don't get paid to try to talk you out of selling a house, but it sounds like it might be a better option for you to do this, this, and this. And they say, actually, I appreciate you saying that, but we really do need to sell. And I'm glad to hear that you do see alternatives, but based on what our goals are, we definitely need to sell. Okay, well, I'm glad that you brought that up, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Based on that, here's what I would recommend on price. One of the great negotiation techniques that I use when I'm looking at listing and selling a property is this. Hey, you know what's the best thing about hiring me, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? And they say, what's that? And you say, it's absolutely free. You only actually have to pay me when I get an offer on the table and you accept it for a price with a net equity figure and dollars in your pocket that you're happy with. And at the end of the day, isn't that what you really want? Doesn't cost you. If I work for you for 6 to 8 months, super hard, and I work long hours all week, every single week, and the property doesn't sell, how much are you going to pay me? Exactly. So our interests are directly aligned for that I can sell your property for as much as possible. And at the end of the day, isn't that what you really want? You might go a little bit further in your conversation and say A price, B price, and C price. Based on where we position it, will dramatically change the outcome of what we should expect. But here's where I see it being priced at that we can still justify within the market. Anything above and beyond is a total gamble and a question mark. Days on market could be extended. We could risk the option of losing this seasonal opportunity that we have right now if it doesn't sell. We also risk somebody else coming in and undercutting us and getting picked over us, considering we're pushing the market a little bit. But I still feel confident we're not leaving money on the table at this price. Even if we were to take 1 or 2 steps down, I still feel like we're well within the market. We're not necessarily leaving money on the table, but we're putting ourselves in more of a competitive edge so that we have more control if and when an offer comes in. The biggest complaint sellers have is that an agent put up a sign in a lockbox and we never heard from him again. The reason this happens is because sometimes agents will overpromise a little bit to get the listing, and then when they underperform once they have the listing, because of that, they're a little bit embarrassed to follow up with the seller, which in my opinion is actually what we might call real estate malpractice. And I'll be honest with sellers and say, I wouldn't be doing you any service if I was to tell you that your house is worth any more than this. And then I'll also play devil's advocate and say, unless I'm missing something significant, but based on what I've shown you, everything that I can see, which I've shown you all of it so far, and I'll even go live in detail with them as I search through the property and relay the information to them them in real time and show them all the listing photos as I search through them on the matrix back end of the MLS system. And at the end of it, if they have anything that they bring up and say, well, did you consider this or you didn't consider that? And if it is a unique style of property, I will take those things into consideration and I will be honest and say to them, I'm actually looking for feedback from you in order to try to justify a higher price if it is at all possible, because of course that's what I'm here to do. But if we don't have that, we have to read between the lines of what we say, and we have to play the odds in our favor based on what our goals are, because price is always a moving target. And again, I'm just the messenger. I'm here to help represent you. I'm here to help you sell your property for as much as we can in the shortest period of time that we can, and it's your decision at the end of the day. Hope you found some value. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to send me a personal question or message, follow me on Insta or send me an email. My info's in the description below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you on this video next. Have a fantastic day.